In this short video, I'm going to go over IGCSE Marine Science 6.3, which is about fishing and fishing methods. As always, these videos are made for my class and are free to use by anyone. There is no economic benefit for me for doing this, and all errors here are mine and mine alone, and does in no way reflect on the Cambridge syllabus. In part 1 of the 6.3 syllabus, we looked at the impact of fishing on socioeconomic factors and environmental factors. In this part of the video, we are mainly going to look at the part of the syllabus that describes the different methods of fishing and what impact they have. One of the most simple and oldest way of fishing is cast netting. If you look at old pictures, stuff like this has been going on for thousands of years. By cast netting, it can be done from the shore or from a boat, and you throw a net with some weights on it, and then you drag it back in. You don't catch that many fish compared to the other methods. Net size can be adjusted so you can let the juveniles escape. This is quite sustainable compared to the other fishing methods. It's not useful for catching bigger fish. It requires quite some skill and practice, and you can catch some non-targeted individuals. But compared to the other types we'll look at here, this is really low impact and a very traditional way of fishing. Trawling, on the other hand, has a very different environmental impact. And trawling is a way of fishing that really only works when you have ships with a strong engine. You pull a large net between one or two boats, and there's a huge open mouth that catches a lot of organisms. This can both be done high in the water, or it can be done at the bottom, depending on what species you're going for. Mesh size can be adjusted, so in theory, smaller fish could escape. But with this method of fishing, it's quite easy to overfish, catch like a lot of fish at one time, and when it's done at the bottom, it can do a lot of damage to the seabed. There can be a large bycatch. You catch organisms you don't want to catch. And lost nets, when they're lost, they turn into ghost nets who keep fishing and killing for a long time after they've been dropped by the ship. You can also sometimes catch dolphins, turtles, and sharks in the trawling nets, and especially the dolphins and the turtles, well, they need to go up for water, for air, so if they're caught in a net, they will die. And this can lead to a quite large impact on species you want to conserve. Benthic trawling, when you drag the trawl over the bottom of the ocean, can lead to a lot of damage. Some type of fishing, you need to do it this way to catch like special types of shellfish and so on. But in general, this leads to a degradation of the seafloor environment, and you end up with something that can look quite like a desert, because every time you drag a trawl net over the bottom, you pretty much destroy the seabed. So it is a very destructive way of fishing, and one we probably should get rid of. Purse or seine fishing is a very old fishing method that is now used in a much larger scale on bigger boats. But it's a type of fishing that if you went back and showed it to a fisherman 300 years ago, he would understand this type of fishing. Again, with our bigger ships now and our use of sonar, we are just way more efficient. In this net here, you have your boat makes a huge circle, and the upper part of the net has floats and the bottom has weights. So when you make a huge circle like this, in the end you make like this huge purse, which makes it impossible for the fish to escape. So when the circle is complete, then the drawstring rope is pulled so that the base of the net is closed, and then it's all hauled in on the boat. It is not as destructive as trawling is, but you can still have a lot of bycatch here, species such as dolphins and turtles who get caught up in the net and get killed in the process. It also can quite easily lead to overfishing. If you catch an entire shoal of fish, then there's nothing left for like next year. Gill nets and tangle nets is a very old way of fishing as well. Um, you might see traditional fishing where you put a few poles out in the ocean and put a net between them, and then the next day you go out and see what you catch. It's a vertical net suspended from floats or from sticks, and then you leave it for some days and then collect it. And you can adjust the mesh size for what you want to catch. But still, you will see that you catch non-target species as well. Animals that might look for fish, like seals, can get caught in it. Dolphins, seabirds, and turtles, even sharks, can get caught in them and then die. And if there is a storm or something, well, they can rip off from the floats, and then you have them floating around in the ocean as ghost nets when they keep up killing for a long time. Tangle nets are a modern form of gill nets that has a very small mesh. The mesh is so small that only the head and jaw of the fish comes caught, and bycatch can be untangled and released unharmed, at least in theory. These nets has been used to catch salmon in parts of Canada. Basket traps and fish traps is also a very old way of fishing. Traditionally, they were made from wood or from bamboo, and then you place them at the bottom of the ocean, and they're quite useful for catching lobsters, crabs, some fish. Again, with modern fishery, they tend to be bigger now, and we can fish in more places than you could like 3,000 years ago. But lobster pots, for example, are cages that are lowered into the water and left for a period of time. The cage contains bait to attract the lobsters, and then you go back and you pull up the traps, and then you have the lobsters. Some basket traps are permanent structures where fish swim into the trap at high tide and then become stuck at low tide. The main problem are overuse of them, which can lead to overfishing, and they can also be damaged if lost traps. They'll continue fishing as their version of a ghost net. Longline fishing is a commonly used method for catching fish, especially predatory fish. Fishers use long lines both at the ocean surface or at the bottom. Surface longlining, you use long nylon fishing lines with barbed hook attached to them. Each hook has some kind of bait on it, and then you drag them along the boat for a long time, and the bait attracts fish, and then the fish get caught on the hooks. Fishers, they use bottom long lining to catch fish, and they leave the long lines at the bottom for some days, and then you pull them back up, and then hopefully some bottom dwelling fish are now attached to your hooks and are easy to catch. Modern long lines can be several kilometers long and have up to like 3,000 hooks. And fishing on this scale brings a serious risk of overfishing. And there are many governments that now place restriction on how many hooks can be used. Bycatch is a serious problem. The hooks can entangle seabirds, turtles, sharks, dolphins. The lines can entangle them as well. And every year some lines get lost, so you have not ghost nets, but ghost lines drifting the ocean and still killing marine organisms in years after. Rod fishing is a kind of fishing I think many of us have tried. You go out with a fishing rod and a hook with your family and you catch a few fish. This is quite sustainable because you only catch one fish at a time. It is also used commercially for catching high-value fish such as tuna, and it can be used as tourism where people pay a lot of money to go out on a boat to catch special fish, tuna, swordfish, marlin, and so on. So in general, you have much less bycatch, you don't have any problem with ghost nets, and if you catch the wrong fish, you can release it back into the ocean again. So this is in general considered a low-impact fishing, and a better way compared to many of the others. One way of fishing that is not mentioned here in the book and the syllabus is underwater hunting, where you use a spear gun And this way you only kill the animals you want. So in general, this is also a very low impact way of fishing. Fishers has long known that fish are attracted to floating objects. Small species of fish often seek shelter from predators and find food under floating pieces of wood. This can be used commercially, so you simply make floating platforms that will attract the fish. So there are several key principles involved in this. A floating platform is attached, and a long line hangs from the platform to a weight or anchor at the bottom. Now, producers such as macroalgae that grow on the platform and the lines. You also have microalgae growing in surrounding algae, which means that small fish will get attracted to the area, and a food web will develop here, and larger predatory species are attracted by the presence of small fish, and then you can fish them. This makes fishing of these species easier, but if used too much, it can also lead to overfishing, and in some cases, animals get entangled in the anchor lines. So most of the illustration I used in this presentation I have borrowed from the MSc Marine Stewardship Council website. So I just want to talk a little bit about what MSC is. MSC is a way of labeling fish who have been caught in a way that is seen as more sustainable. I will put a link to the MSC here on the YouTube. And if you're interested in sustainable fishing, this is a good way to learn a lot about the methods and how you can eat fish without destroying the ocean.